Liberal Democrat spokesperson Steve Darling.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And the holy grail that all governments seek, of whichever hue, is economic growth. And I think, therefore, it's really important that we look through the lens of economic growth and whether the employment bill actually drives economic growth. I know from my time on the Bill Committee that I spent with the many hours with the member for Mid-Buckinghamshire, hearing his oratory for many hours, that we spoke much about productivity and whether this bill would be driving productivity. When I've engaged with people in my community, such as Enlightened HR and Alison Bennett, around what the impact of this bill could be, the destination for her as a HR consultant was very welcome. And we've heard from lots of people who have been consulted on this bill that the destination and the aspirations of this are correct and appropriate. But it's how we get there and whether the government have got the balance right between employers and employees there is really important, because the last thing we want this to do is having a chilling effect on the economy. We're only too aware of how the national insurance contributions that are set to kick in April are already having that negative impact on our economy, and we don't want this well-intended piece of legislation to echo that further. The fact that there are 250 amendments coming before us today at this late stage of this legislation, whilst the Minister says that this is due to levels of consultation and so forth and should be welcomed, of us trimming our sails, if that was the case, why did, and if the Minister is in such listening mode at the Bill Committee, why were no amendments accepted at all by the government from opposition members if they were on listening mode? So I'd welcome some reflections on the wind-up for the Minister there. As Liberal Democrats and Liberal Democrats spokesman for the DWP, carers are front and centre of our world. The fact that we have the population of Portsmouth, effectively 200,000 people a year, walking away from the employment market to take up caring occupations and support what is often members of their families. That's 600 a day walking away. That has the impact of £8 billion a year on our economy that leaves us less productive as an economy. So our amendment as Liberal Democrats around making leave for carers a paid opportunity is something that I would hope that the government would give serious thought to, because making sure that those carers have that flexibility and that breathing space will actually unlock more people for our market of employment. Making carers a protective characteristic is extremely important. We've already heard about harassment elsewhere and discrimination as part of this bill, but that would help support carers immensely. Ensuring that there is also a doubling of pay for those who are taking adoptive leave is extremely important. Driving that there is that support for those people who take those caring roles, such as kinship care, is extremely important. And I would hope that the Minister would take these family roles into account.
Will my honourable friend give way?
With great pleasure.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. Does he agree with me that the government has missed an opportunity to recognise the extraordinary contribution of kinship carers in this legislation? I recently met with a couple in my Bicester and Woodstock constituency who are kinship carers, They acted out of love, but they've had none of the support that foster parents would have had in looking after the children in their care. So does my honourable friend agree that the government would do well to look at including the same employment rights for kinship carers as they currently offer to foster parents?
Yeah. Steve Darling.
Thank you. As somebody who's adopted myself, I only know too well the importance of that supportive love. And also somebody who's been involved heavily with children's services, Madam Deputy Speaker. I know that often the best care for those children who are in need of loving homes are often not too far away from home. And the more that children's services can be less of a child rescuing service and more of a child support service, the better. So I would strongly endorse what my colleague alluded to there, Madam Deputy Speaker. An area that exercised the member for Mid-Buckinghamshire particularly was around third-party harassment. And I would strongly support the proposals from the government in this bill. Having engaged with young women in Torbay, particularly from Torquay Girls Grammar School, who work in retail and the hospitality industry, they find that harassment in the workplace not a bit of banter, but repugnant in the extreme. And they often will go to a shift with, and they shared with me when I visited Torquay Girls, that they would go to a shift with a sick at the pit of their stomach, feeling sick that they knew that this particular individual would be coming in that evening who would act inappropriately with them, and therefore their managers should have a duty of care towards them, and I welcome that within this bill. I know that there's also non-disclosure agreements that are alluded to with amendments here, and I would welcome the kind words that the Minister have said around that, but warm words do not actually get it onto legislation. So I would ask the Minister to reflect on that, and I'm sure colleagues will intervene on NDAs. Finally, the areas I need to cover are in respect of probationary periods. And as Liberal Democrats, we would really welcome ensuring that it is a 3 to 9 months on the front of this bill. This would ensure that there is less chance of expensive tribunals for employers. We'd also like to welcome the steps that the government have made in respect of statutory sick pay, but we need to ensure that the balance is struck correctly between the burden on employers and positive outcomes for the employees. So in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Would my honourable friend give way?
Very happily.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. I'd like to welcome the amendments put forward by the Liberal Democrats, in particular amendments new clauses 12, 13 and 14, which would extend parental rights, and particularly paternity rights, from 2 to 6 weeks in terms of leave, and doubling the amount of pay. Those precious weeks are essential for fathers to bond with their child and to provide additional support to their partners. Would he agree with me that these are essential amendments that the government should accept?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I would agree with my colleague that actually when you go and speak to primary school teachers, the challenges that they particularly face is where there is poor attachment between the parent and the child, and that can have a significant developmental impact on young people. So by giving those greater powers through this bill, one can only drive that great strength of connection between that part of the family unit. So, in conclusion, the reality is that we need to be supporting small businesses and getting the balance right between what the good stuff within this bill is, but making sure we're not punishing businesses, making sure that we're supporting the family, because most of what I've spoken to as the Liberal Democrat spokesperson is the family is the core part of what our society is, and strengthening that will hopefully strengthen outcomes and strengthening our society. My fear is that this is a little bit like Snow White's apple, that it may look extremely good on the outside, but it did send her to sleep. And my fear is that this employment bill is a little like that, where actually it may have lots of promise on the outside, but it could be a sleeping potion for our economy. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Peter Dowd.